Hello and welcome to Bud Explains, where I take a subject, be that rules, history or concept, from the role-playing world and try to explain it to you in a way that I hope helps you understand how it works. Today's explanation is the Karotechia in Delta Green. Please note that this is generally considered handler-only information and pretty nasty at times. I mean, they are the worst kind of Nazis, but that being said, watch at your own risk. It is worth mentioning that this is pre the year 2001. Why will become clear by the end. Also, I'd like to give special thanks to Severin Valser from the Miskatonic Repository Facebook group for helping me with the pronunciation of certain German words throughout. It's an often said thing that old Nazis don't die, they just head to South America. And in the world of Delta Green, this is closer to the truth than many know, as in a well-defended Brazilian manor, 3 original Nazis still live and have started a holy mission to begin the Fourth Reich, one steeped in vile occult practices. This is the Karotechia. Masquerading as a group called Odessa, they work with white supremacists worldwide, and though they are small in number, they are long in reach, with 2 of their leaders being as interested in hypergeomic longevity as much as Aryan dominance. Despite their numbers, they are a substantial threat, and their network is strong. Their ideals in attempting to create the Fourth Reich are essentially pipe dreams. However, they are a threat to the US, and by proxy, Delta Green. Heinrich Himmler had a genuine interest in the occult, even going as far as restoring Wewelsburg Castle in order for it to be a kind of Camelot to the Third Reich, complete with a round table that seances used to be performed at in order to summon the spirit of Bismarck. The place was lavish, and dead German generals were relocated there so that their spirits could be called upon for advice. A number of Nazi elite believed in the occult, including not just Himmler, but also Hess and Hitler, with many of them being members of the Thule Gesellschaft, otherwise known as the Thule Society, a German occultist group that were founded in Munich shortly after World War II. This society promoted the ideals of Aryan superiority linked to the lost civilization of Atlantis. Hitler was friends with Dietrich Eckart, who was the one who introduced him to anti-Semitism, and Hitler praised him in Mein Kampf as one of his inspirations. Just before his death in 1923, Eckart, who was an alcoholic and drug addict, was quoted as saying, "Hitler will dance, but it is I who will call the tune. Do not mourn me. I shall have influenced history more than any other German." In 1933, Hitler was elected Reichschancellor, and an ancestral heritage research and teaching foundation known as the ANB conducted some occult research. They were part of Himmler's staff, and their duties included collecting archaeological and anthropological information to support the racial doctrine of the Nazis. By 1935, Himmler had created the Sonderkommando H, or Special Unit H, with the H standing for Hexen or Witches, the Reichssicherheitshauptamt, or RSHA, which was an umbrella organisation that contained the SS, the Kriminalpolizei, or Criminal Police, and the Gestapo. Sonderkommando H's only duty was to collect witch trial files from the Catholic Church in order to justify the Inquisition crimes against the German people. During this, Sonderkommando H encountered phenomena that led to the creation of the SS department that was devoted to researching the occult, paranormal and unnatural to aid in the Nazi war machine. They were called the Karotechia. The Karotechia's name had a meaning that was only revealed to the highest-ranking members of the organisation, and they were made up of those from academia and occult circles within Nazi Germany, with many of them also being part of other groups within the Nazi government. They even recruited members from concentration camps, and unlike Delta Green, they embraced the use of magic. Backed by the SS, they pillaged the libraries and museums of occupied Europe for anything that would lead them to knowledge and power. Anybody who dabbled in the occult was scrutinised by the Karotechia, with even the likes of the Freemasons and the Romani people being interrogated about their use of occult powers. Places of worship were looted of ancient texts, though the Vatican Library Z's collection was spared due to an agreement with the then head of the Catholic Church, Pope Pius XII. The Karotechia answered only to Himmler and the Führer himself, and were feared by the SS, who never questioned their orders. In 1941, they diverted over 1,000 Jewish prisoners from camps near Krakow to Normandy to conduct experiments. The reality was that they were sacrificed in order to contact Ahuyaloa, a deep one colony off the coast of Cornwall, in order for them to make an ally of them, so that they could block the sea routes and eventually invade England, though the price the deep ones wanted was one that went against the Aryan racial purity laws. They offered Jews, Russians and Romani prisoners of war, which were shipped out to the coast. A number of important deep ones were killed when Delta Green launched a surprise attack against them, to which they retreated into the ocean, never resuming contact with the Karotechia. One of the Karotechia's oldest projects was Action Eislaus, or Operation Icepalace. In 1939, during an Antarctic expedition led by Captain Alfred Richter, something was found buried in the glacial ice, and up until 1945, a number of Karotechia experts were taken to the location, known as Point 103, as well as hundreds of Nazi scientists, SS combat engineers and mountain troops. Nobody knows what happened to these people outside of the operation, Himmler and the Führer, and once they had taken their own lives, nobody in Europe knew the reasoning behind it. Rumours abound that it was a secret U-boat base, a super weapon, or even a haven for the Nazi elite to flee to. The Karotechia had mixed fortunes when it came to using magic to aid the war effort. They discovered a version of the Necronomicon called Deutschnamensjansbocher that was written in an ancient Gothic language, with the translation to German shredding the sanity of 3 experts. When experimenting with the formulae within, it became clear that the Karotechia had discovered incredible power, but lacked any means to control it. And in 1945, a number of Karotechia researchers and SS personnel were annihilated after a poorly abandoned attempt to summon the demon sultan itself, Azathoth. Medical technologies were an area where they had success, and in 1944, using a method that paralleled Herbert West's attempts in the 1920s, the Karotechia grasped how to reanimate the dead, though they were impossible to control and attacked anything on sight. Literal truckloads of these walking dead were taken to the Eastern Front and released onto the battlefields, causing significant Soviet losses. They also made advances in life-extending technology, though none of this could stop the relentless advance of the Allies. The Karotechia's final action came minutes before Hitler took his own life. An order was sent to them to join up with the SS's werewolf team to recreate the event that destroyed Naudebaum Castle, only this time it was not to be abandoned. The plan was almost carried to the point of completion by fanatical Nazis, though Delta Green fought them in Operation Lunacy, who had a shoot to kill for anybody suspected of being in the Karotechia. Luckily, the events of Naudebaum Castle were never recreated, and Werewolf lay in ruins. There were originally 164 members of the Karotechia, however by the end of Operation Lunacy just 37 remained. They joined up with the organisation the Ehemaligen SS Urigen, otherwise known as the Organisation of Former Members of the SS or Odessa, and abandoned Europe for the rest of the world. And as the membership was unknown, they continued living, despite European police agencies looking for the ex-SS and Gestapo members to answer for their crimes. Odessa's function was to transfer SS members to South America, where they would meet with the Kameradenwerk, Odessa's counterparts. Here they would be given new passports, identities and the like. Delta Green, however, reformed in 1948 and launched Operation Southern Hospitality to find former Karotechia members. Slowly, former Nazis were found and eliminated, and Odessa even reached out to Perón's dictatorship, offering their expertise and knowledge to him. In 1952, Perón offered help in exchange for assistance in finding the Point 103 base in Antarctica, genuinely believing that it contained Nazi-developed superweapons. The Karotechia were in actuality searching for the grotto of a nameless god found in the Necronomicon in order to place them beyond Delta Green's reach. However, before the grotto could be found, US paratroopers assaulted the expedition, killing all the Argentinians and 3 of the remaining Karotechia. An additional one was killed in 1953 in Siberia while on a project to extend the life of Joseph Stalin, and then following the creation of Israel, Mossad Nazi hunters killed 5 Karotechia members. Their numbers were dwindling fast. Around 1956, Delta Green believed that they were gone, only they were wrong. 3 of them had escaped, and to this day they live in La Estancia, a huge rubber plantation in the Brazilian rainforests. Around the turn of the century, the Brazilian rubber boom collapsed, and La Estancia became the command and training centre of the Karotechia. Beginning as the hideout of a Karotechia researcher called Dr. Gunther Frank, it originally covered 200 acres and had a huge main house, stables, Olympic-sized swimming pool, opera house and wharf with warehouses. It has been altered and enlarged, as Dr. Frank has a delicate condition, which means several areas of the main house have been sealed and insulated since the 1950s. Over the years, Karotechia and Odessa members visited La Estancia, including SS Oberführer Reinhard Galt, though in 1975, everything changed. A Karotechia researcher called Dr. Olaf Bitterich arrived with plans to restore the Third Reich, and modifications had been made including an airstrip, soccer stadium, firing ranges and a fake small town to practice combat. Galt, Frank and Bitterich were the last 3 remaining original members of the Karotechia. Dr. Frank had used technology to extend his existence in a terrible half-life state. Galt had used foul magic, and Bitterich appears to have survived through sheer force of will. Though each of them had their own agenda, they agreed to work together to restore National Socialism, wipe out the Jews, and bring to being a glorious Fourth Reich. Before continuing with the history of the Karotechia, I think it would be prudent to discuss each of the final three. Firstly, Dr. Gunther Frank. In 1996 he was aged 101, though physically he looked 66 years old. He purchased La Estancia in 1946 using looted artwork he had pillaged from World War II, having planned well for the collapse of the Third Reich. He placed this fortune at the disposal of the Karotechia, and he technically died of cancer 39 years before. Dr. Frank essentially performs technological necromancy, and it was his work that created the Acción Droga, or resuscitated casualties. He used treatments from the papers of Spanish physician Dr. Javier Muñoz to cheat cancer out of killing him, and now he exists as a spectre of his former self. His brain and memories function normally, however his body has died and is sensitive to temperature above 10 degrees, which will cause it to begin to decompose. Flames would reduce him to nothing within minutes, and the steaming jungle environment outside the complex would destroy him in under 2 hours. He is a prisoner here. In the years since his death, he has tirelessly researched a way of escaping his body, or his tomb as he calls it, but this was stalled with the arrival of Dr. Olav Bitterich in 1975, who assigned him projects in the name of De Führer, with the oldest being the gathering of the remains of former Nazi scientists, officers and the like from across Europe, so that they could be resurrected and join the Fourth Reich. Luckily, Dr. Frank's criminal connections has made smuggling the remains of La Estancia easier. He was also tasked with raising funds for Karotechia scientific research, which includes ELF weapons, racially selective chemicals, and biological warfare components. Dr. Frank agreed at first to these projects due to Bitterich's powers offering him a way out of his living corpse, though without his corpse being complete, the resurrection spell would fail. Dr. Frank resents the projects that prevent him from looking for a way to acquire a new body, and only carries on due to the relationship Bitterich has with De Führer. Additionally, many of the staff at La Estancia are loyal to Bitterich, so Dr. Frank is unsure how they would react to him trying to wrest away power. Also, Bitterich has 12 powerful sorcerers known as the Bischofe. Dr. Frank is currently working on a way of reanimating corpses, in a way that they are loyal troops rather than uncontrollable zombies, with the notion that he could use them to clean house and dispose of Bitterich. Until that day arrives, he serves as head of the Karotechia's finances, chief scientist, and contact to organise crime across Europe and Latin America. During World War II, he heard tale that the Dalt Nam Boka contained a ritual to transfer consciousness from one body to another, though no German translation could be found, and every copy having been destroyed by Delta Green. Dr. Frank came to terms with this as a lost cause until a Gothic Necronomicon appeared in 1994 in a KGB vault. A former general sold it to Dr. Frank via the Russian mafia, who then silenced the general via the same middlemen. The next obstacle he faced was translating it into German. He'd arranged with Reinhard Galt to look out for experts who could be lured to La Estancia. The ritual is mind exchange, which requires the victim to love or strongly favour the spellcaster, and though Dr. Frank knows that this will be difficult, he's willing to deal with it when it appears. Bitterich knows nothing of the Necronomicon Dr. Frank has, nor that it contains spells that he needs to begin his mass extermination and elevation to being a demigod, and he would kill Dr. Frank to gain this knowledge. Next we have Reinhard Galt. Standing at 6'3" and 190 pounds, clean-shaven and with blonde hair, he looks like someone from a Nazi recruitment poster. Born in 1911, he was a homeless orphan during the Great Depression, and Hitler's racial superiority dogma appealed to him. He joined the SS when he was 19 and served in Poland and France, earning the Iron Cross for heroism. A jealous commander assigned him to the Karotechia before the invasion of Russia, and at the close of the war, Galt was tracking down a reputed tribe of invincible warriors in the Belgian Congo called the Anziques, and armed with basic equipment and a copy of Pigafetta's Regnum Congo, eventually found a nomadic tribe that identified with that name. Galt noticed the similarities between the tribal chief described in the book and the one he found, a ritually scarred mountain of a man, and Galt thought at first that he was just a traditional persona that was being portrayed. He was, in actuality, the same man that Pigafetta had described from 1598, and many of the Anziques could remember the taste of the Portuguese sailors they captured. At first he didn't believe they could possibly be the same people. However, as he checked the names and descriptions, he became more convinced that they were. The Anziques informed him that the secret to their longevity was something called the Ageless Banquet, which was specially prepared human flesh. Galt tried to barter for the secret preparation method, but quickly understood that there was nothing that he had that they wanted. The only thing they desired was to taste the flavour of European flesh. Galt became increasingly frustrated as to how to get them to give up their secrets, and when they picked up the news that Hitler was dead, his men begged him to return to Europe. Galt, feeling he was close to discovering their secret, disarmed his men at gunpoint and gave them to the Anziques. That evening he feasted with them and was adopted by the tribe. Over the 6 years he spent with the tribe, he didn't age a day, taking several wives and offering his newborn children as a gift to the chief for his dinner table. He learned how to make the ageless banquet from them, take the minds of slain foes, and how to make the enchanted rings that protected them in battle. He returned to Europe in 1951 and came into contact with Odessa, fighting in various wars until he fled to South America. Galt tracked down Dr. Frank and began running errands for him by finding old books and occult pieces. In 1975, Dr. Olaf Bitterich arrived with plans. Galt rejoined the Karotechia and affirmed his oath before the Führer. Due to Frank's condition and Bitterich's age, Galt oversees field operations. In neo-fascist and anti-Semitic circles, Gant is an almost mythic figure, the model of Aryan ideals that many regard as the leader of the Aryan Revolution, though this is not something that he finds entirely agreeable. His patience for dealing with inferior mortals has grown thin, and the staff of La Estancia live in abject fear of him and his preferences. He has less of an interest in creating a Fourth Reich and making sure his diet stays diverse for eternity, and he collects cannibalistic recipes from around the world and is a fairly good cook. He likes young boys and attractive women for his dinner table, sometimes releasing them into the jungle to hunt them down to add a gamey flavour to their flesh. In recent times he's taken to carving up victims while they're still alive, but is unhappy that they pass out mid-meal. To such end, he has made an agreement with Dr. Frank to use his necromantic expertise to keep his victims conscious throughout the meal, which has been successful so far. In exchange, Galt has been finding experts in the ancient Gothic language. And lastly, we have Dr. Olaf Bitterich. An occultist in Germany between the two world wars, he was a self-styled medium who could speak to the dead. Essentially a con artist, though a very knowledgeable and skilled one. And though his title is Doctor, he is in fact not one. He was recruited by the Sonderkommando H in 1936 due to his pure Aryan heritage and occult power. Bitterich did not believe the research would go anywhere, and he was just happy to get out of active duty. He was assisted by the Karotechia project that involved the disinterment of people believed to be users of magic with the hope that they had been buried with items of interest. He worked for 6 years, though nothing of value was found, until the tomb of Alexis Ladeau, an associate of Friedrich Wilhelm von Junz, the author of Unersprechlichen Kulten. Ladeau was alleged to have burned von Junz's second book after reading it and cut his own throat. Within his casket, there was what appeared to be pages from von Junz's unfinished manuscript, unburned. He hid the papers and read them himself. He discovered that the papers described how to contact those beyond, so he cast a spell to contact the great military leaders of Germany's past. The spell didn't actually contact who he thought it would. It was a spell to contact Nyarlathotep, though the Crawling Chaos did not reveal this, of course, appearing as Friedrich the Great, and Bitterich changed from bitter skeptic to zealous believer. He communed with the spirits of the likes of Bismarck, Nietzsche and Arminius, passing on their wisdom to Hitler and Himmler, and they took all pronouncements to heart, implementing them all as policy. As the Soviets closed on Berlin, Bitterich was about to join Hitler in the bunker when Nyarlathotep appeared to him as the mythic hero Siegfried, telling him he needed to flee Germany as his purpose was great. He then made his way to Switzerland and then to Spain, awaiting further instructions. The next time Bitterich was contacted by Nyarlathotep, he appeared as Hitler himself, who told him that he had not died but had entered a higher plane of existence, transcending human flesh, and due to the sacrifices in the SS death camps, had become an enlightened master, in the same mould as Jesus, Buddha, and the high priests of Atlantis. He told Bitterich that he would become his first disciple, and that the order of the swastika was not dead, but had just begun. The Führer sent Bitterich to the ends of the earth, collecting tools, knowledge and followers to elevate the Aryan race. He brought together 12 pure Aryan pupils in sorcery, who he named his Bischofer. In 1975, he traced rumours of a German mercenary who was immortal, and they found him in La Estancia. Bitterich was furious with Gant and Frank for their laziness and lack of purpose. He chastised them that they lay hiding here while Germany lay divided by Americans and communists. He couldn't believe that they had forgotten everything. They were given a refresher course by Bitterich straight from Der Führer himself. In awe and terror they agreed to reform the Karotechia, bringing together the remnants of Odessa and the upcoming neo-fascist movements under one umbrella. The dead Nazis from around the world have been brought to La Estancia, where the Bischöfe raised them to serve their Führer again. They lulled to Bitterich, some out of fear but others out of gratitude and awe. He considers Dr. Frank nothing but a technician who is hidden in his icebox for 40 years, and Gantz simply as an efficient killer, and despite what they bring to the table, he believes himself to be the real power behind the throne. He is confident that the new generation of Aryan warriors in the Fourth Reich will last 1,000 years, and he will be at the Führer's side to see it. His main goal is to commit mass sacrifices to provide the energy to elevate him to the level of enlightened master, though he has started to worry that this may not be a possibility as his health is failing, and as such drives mass exterminations to fuel his apotheosis, as well as exploring magical and technological ways of extending his life so that he may see the triumph of the Fourth Reich. Due to his health, he is confined to a motorised wheelchair, twisted by age and hatred, a few wisps of hair on his melon-shaped head. He requires an oxygen cylinder, however his mind is as sharp as a scalpel, and his devotion to his beloved Führer is unquestioning. So with this in mind, let's move to the Karotechia today. Whereas the original Karotechia served the Third Reich, the reborn one is far more ambitious, and considers itself the actual Fourth Reich. An underground superpower of fascists, white supremacists and anti-Semite organisations, and individuals with influence throughout the criminal underworld. At the centre of this are the Dritte Triumvirate, Dr. Frank, Dr. Bitterich, and Oberführer Galt. Below them is an organisation called the Scherfiguren, chess pieces. Directly underneath the main three are Bitterich's Bischöfe, and below them are the Ritter, or Knights, of which there are hundreds. La Estancia regularly conducts seminars in torture, terrorism and paramilitary tactics, which are attended by Third World security forces, criminal organisations, terrorist groups and mercenaries. The Ritter oversee the many thousands of the Karotechia's Bauern or pawns. Those Bauern who assist Dr. Frank have been elevated to trusted assistants. The Bauern generally think they are working for Odessa in order to revive fascism worldwide, though the reality is the Karotechia absorbed Odessa in the 1970s, as well as other Nazi organisations like Kameradenwerk or Comrades Organisation and Die Spinne, or the Spider, that had declined due to the death of the ex-Nazis that formed them, though the Karotechia are resurrecting them. Former members of the Gestapo, SS and the like are now alive again and join the ranks of the Ritter and the Bauern. The most important members of the resurrected Nazis are known as Die Untoten, or the Living Dead, and include people like SS Oberstgruppenführer Josef Sepp Dietrich, who died in 1966 and was a close friend and bodyguard of Hitler himself. He oversaw the execution of the Brown Shirt during the Night of the Long Knives. There's Reichsprotector and SS Obergruppenführer Reinhard Heydrich, who was assassinated in 1942. He was Himmler's second in command, chief of the Sicherheitsdienst, or SD, the Reich Security Service, head of the RSHA and Reich Security Main Office, and the first administrator of Hitler's final solution of the Jewish question. There is Obergruppenführer Theodor Eich, who was killed aged 50 after being shot down over the Russian front. He was the architect, builder and director of the German pre-war concentration camps, and created the SS Totenkopfverbände, or SSTV, that worked as Einsatzgruppen, the action groups, otherwise known as the SS murder groups. We have the SS Standartenführer, Otto Skorzeny, who died of cancer in 1975. He was known as Hitler's commando and planned and performed the rescue of Mussolini from Italian rebels, and an active member of Odessa and creator of Die Spinne. There is Obersturmbannführer Jochen Peiper, who was assassinated by French vigilantes in 1976, and was a highly decorated Waffen-SS panzer leader who performed several massacres of French civilians and American soldiers, including the Malmedy massacre, and was released from prison in 1956 as part of a general amnesty. And perhaps most infamous of all, there is SS Untersturmführer Dr. Josef Mengele, who drowned in 1978. Otherwise known as the Angel of Death and the most well-known Nazi war criminal to escape justice. As chief medical officer at Auschwitz between 1943 and 1945, he selected which prisoners were to be worked to death or sent to the gas chambers. He started the Institute of Hereditary Biology and Race Research in order to find ways to chemically and surgically alter inferior races to make them Aryan Übermensch. His ghastly experiments killed hundreds and he never faced justice for his horrific crimes. Those Bauern who brought back by the resurrection spell serve their masters, understanding that they can be easily turned back to dust. The most important of these is Antonio Echeverria, a highly ranking member of the Cali drug cartel who provided anything that they asked for. Ex-Nazis are always favoured members of Die Baan, and those brought back have been diverse, such as the South African Afrikaans Landholders Alliance, the German and Austrian Yolks Party, and P2 Masonic lodges in Italy and Argentina, the American Underground Army, and the Coalition for the Defence of French Culture. They have strong connections among neo-fascists in Latin America due to the links of Odessa, and many Bauern still serve these organisations. In the Middle East, most of the current Karotechia members are part of the anti-Israeli terrorist groups. Money was supplied to the likes of the Sword of Allah and the Jihad for the Eradication of Zion, though Arabic Bauern are held in low esteem when compared to European or Aryan ones, and are never asked to join the Staff at La Estancia and are never promoted to the rank of Ritter. The Karotechia's goals, most particularly those of Dr. Bitterich, is the Fourth Reich to rule the world, guided by the Council of Die Führer. They truly believe they can summon his spirit from the great beyond, and genuinely think he has ascended, though it is Nyarlathotep who is guiding their progress. Their current schemes involve masquerading as Odessa in order to gain as many white supremacist supporters that they can, and second, to seek occult knowledge. Though they are already well versed in the occult, they search for the more esoteric rarities. They also seek out old sorcerers from the past to be resurrected and provide unknown knowledge to the Karotechia. Nyarlathotep, under the guise of Die Führer, is guiding the Karotechia and plans to show them the more forbidden secrets, and its own aim is to bring them to the worship of Azathoth. Members of Delta Green are likely to meet minions of the Karotechia loyal to their ideals, and these groups may arouse suspicion, with the example being that a group of skinheads trying to steal von Juntz's manuscripts to send them to Brazil may raise eyebrows, and all trails lead to a mansion in the jungle. The minions of the Karotechia are spread wide and are violent, and though many of humanity have unknowingly embraced Nyarlathotep's vision, and as such the problem is bigger than the agents can handle, destroying Nazis is always a worthwhile pursuit. So you may wonder, with all of the above in mind, what happened to the Karotechia post-1996? Well, this signalled the first and last time that Delta Green and Majestic 12 worked together. In the summer of 2001, they joined forces to raid La Estancia, deep within the Amazon. Director Smith had the score to settle with them, and this was something Delta Green had wanted for half a century. At this point, Reinhard Galt had been assassinated and made contact with Russian GRU SV-8 operatives who were also hunting him. It was decided under Operation Bluefly that Delta Green would provide every advantage that modern technology could offer: real-time satellite imagery, logistical support, airlift capacity, the works. On the 24th of August 2001, a Delta Green team approached La Estancia, and by the next morning there was nothing but smoking rubble. At the same time, the Russians had carried out simultaneous strikes on Karotechia safe houses in Dubrovnik, Ternopil and Sidon. Dozens of known threats were confirmed to be amongst the dead, but most importantly, Dr. Olav Bitterich and Dr. Gunter Frank were confirmed to be dead. Delta Green, Majestic 12 and GRU SV-8 had worked like clockwork together, with each force being impressed by the other, and hopes rose that they could create a working relationship to deal with mutual threats and reach a mutual understanding. That was until the sun rose in New York City on September the 11th, 2001. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like and share it, and make sure to subscribe for more Bud Explains videos in the future. Bud out.